Scripture is from Mark's Gospel, the 8th chapter, beginning at the 22nd verse. I'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version this morning. Mark 8, beginning at verse 22. They came to Bethsaida. Some people brought a blind man to Jesus and begged him to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had put saliva on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, "Can you see anything?" And the man looked up and said, "I can see people, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he looked intently, and his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Then Jesus sent him away to his home, saying, "Do not even go into the village." The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of the Lord endures forever. Amen. Would you pray with me? Gracious God, the hour for preaching is at hand. Your people have gathered in your presence, and I stand as your servant. So I ask that in this time, in this place, you would empty me of self, fill my mind, my heart, the very essence of my being with your Spirit, so that the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts might be acceptable in your sight, for you are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. It's an interesting story. Kind of a perplexing story in some ways, and I don't know why, but as I was reading the Scripture, I kept being reminded of Paul, the Verizon guy. Although I understand now he switched sides. But back when he was Paul, the Verizon guy, you'd see him on your television coming through, and he'd be walking through a variety of settings, sometimes on a busy city street, sometimes out in the wilderness, and he's got a cell phone up to his ear, and he's going, "Can you hear me now? Good. Can you hear me now? Good." Paul, the Verizon guy, that sense of well, can you still hear me? Can you hear me now? And Jesus, in this story, a blind man brought to him. Let's go out of the village. How about now? Well, I can see people, but they look like trees. Now, what? This is Jesus. Did he just not get it right the first time? Was this one especially stubborn and needed another go? I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I need another go every now and then. But I always kind of look and see what's the bread on the sandwich when I'm looking at Scripture. I started reading Mark's Gospel in a new way. The thought is that the author of Mark is actually John Mark that we meet in the book of Acts. And that what he is doing in this Gospel is he's making his best effort to record the stories that he heard Simon Peter tell. And so I kind of have tried to read the book of Mark with this idea of Mark sitting on the floor, listening to these old war stories of what it was like when we were walking with Jesus, when Jesus was among us, and hearing the story. Yeah, you remember at Bethsaida that time? Yeah, Jesus and the blanket, and had to do it twice. Yeah, and well, now you remember right before that. That was the thing with the bread, where we were on the boat, and Jesus turns to us and he says, "Watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees." And it was Philip. I know it was. Leaned over and went, "He knows I didn't stop at Kroger. I didn't get the bread." Why are y'all talking about bread? Now, do you remember there were 5,000 people gathered together? You remember there were 5 loaves? How many baskets of fragments did you pick up? 12? Bread? Oh yeah, and right after that, That was when Jesus said, "Hey, who are people saying that I am?" And Simon Peter, oh, my favorite, perks up and says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Yeah, seeing it, kind of. He got the Messiah part. He didn't quite get the suffering part. You know that "get thee behind me, Satan" business? Sometimes you just gotta work it. I just feel like Jesus every now and then had to rub spit on the disciples' eyes and go, "Okay, how about now? How are you seeing now?" And we're not all that different from the 12, really. I think we all, in our own way, we each suffer from our own blindness. We lose sight of each other. We really lose sight of each other. I hear it sometimes as I've moved about the region. One of the interesting things that I've heard is I've heard people talk about the region as though it is some entity separate and distinct from themselves. What they probably really mean is the regional minister or maybe the regional office, but they talk about it as the region. So turn to your neighbor and say, "Neighbor,
Neighbor.
we are the region." I'm looking at the Christian church in Kentucky gathered in the room here today. We lose sight of one another. We lose sight of those connections, of those relationships. We lose sight of who we are. We lose sight that it actually means something when we slap a chalice on the sign outside. That this it means something, that simple confession of faith, Peter's good statement, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." That's it. We don't get to write the test. The test has one simple question on it. The Bible is our only sure guide in matters of faith and practice. That's important to us. Now we take that scripture and we each take it to ourselves, and we can land in different places, and that's okay. We can sit in the living room and argue about the different places we land in scripture as much as we want. But when we come to the dining room, that's where we become one church. Somebody asked me one time, can anything good come out of Logan County? There was a Presbyterian minister in Bourbon County named Barton Warren Stone. He went down to Logan County, and he experienced what was a great sacrament or a brush arbor revival. Today we'd call them a camp meeting, and you know how the preachers are. You go and you experience something good, and you go, wonder if I could do that at my church. And so he comes back to his Presbyterian church in Concord, and they have themselves a camp meeting. Then he goes back down to Logan County, marries Elizabeth Campbell, comes back, and in August of 1801, depends on whose account you read, 10,000, 12,000, maybe 30,000 people gather at the Cambridge Church. And a movement is born for the unity of Christians as its polar star. Out of that emerges the last will and testament of the Springfield Presbytery, where I think Pastor Stone is also encouraging us to keep sight of one another. One of the articles in the last will and testament says, "We will that preachers and people cultivate a spirit of mutual forbearance. Pray more and dispute less." See, we lose sight of each other. We let words get in the way. We use ugly words like autonomy. And that doesn't appear in the design anywhere. And actually, in and of itself, it's not a bad word. It's how I hear it used sometimes. It's kind of spoken in the tones of a defiant teenager. You can't tell us what to do. We're autonomous. True enough, we respect the authority of the local congregation. The local congregation is the engine that drives the wheels of mission. But we can't do this alone. We're best, we're better, we're stronger together. We would do well to talk less about our independence and more about our interdependence. See, I have a dream that someday, when somebody says the region, that what pops into your mind when you hear that word is not a person or a place, whether that's Red Mile Road or Kumbaya or Wakandaho, but it's that church in the next town. It's that elder that I met at that workshop. It's that sense of somebody else that's in this mission and in this ministry with me. And to do that, we've got to regain sight of our relationships. We let words get in the way. We use labels and group identity to talk about people. We call one another by position. We call people by names like conservative and liberal and anti-this and pro-that and Western and Eastern and Democrat and Republican and left and right. We identify people by position and we forget to call one another by name. And we tend to define ourselves by what we're not rather than what we are. See, I don't care whether I've welcomed you into the living room or whether we're in the dining room. We're all people with names when we're in the house. We've got to call one another by name. See, we can recover our sight. I'm not aware of a story in the Gospels where a blind person comes to Jesus or is brought to Jesus and Jesus says, well, wouldn't you really rather just stay blind? I've not seen that. We can recover our sight. This is Jesus we're working with. This is Jesus that can rub our eyes. And maybe it doesn't all come back at once. Sometimes blindness can be a little stubborn. Sometimes it takes more than one go to get things crisp and clear again. Jesus will keep working on it, even when it doesn't work right away. Let's keep working on it. I see people, but they look like trees walking. Well, let's keep working on it. Well, how about now? Well, it's not about the bread, but let's keep working on it. Yes, Peter, you know that I'm the Messiah, but you don't understand the whole story. Let's keep working on it. Oh, hey, there's that church over there in the next town. I remember meeting them. They're good folks. Let's see what we can do together. Let's keep working on it. Oh, yes. I remember Anne. She's doing good stuff over there in Glasgow. Let's keep working on it. See, Jesus doesn't stop. Jesus will continue to rub the spit on our eyes and say, how about now? How is it now? How's the vision now? Is it getting a little clearer? The little things matter. As I was reading the scripture up here today, it caught my attention for the first time. Adverbs matter. He looked intently. This is intentional, folks. We look intently. We look on purpose. We look at one another. We see one another as one church. Different places, different positions, different identities, different histories. But we are one church. One church recovering our sight so that we might sing Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind. Somebody say blind. But now I see. Somebody say I see. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind. But now I see. Was